everyone, and welcome to today's Conference Tracker Tech Tuesday, setting up your registration. So today's presenters will be myself, Chad Blodgett, Business Development Manager here at Engineerica Systems, as well as Garrett Effers, one of our software support representatives. Now, if this is your first time joining our Tech Tuesday, we actually do this every third Tuesday at 1 Eastern, or at least we try to do it every third Tuesday. Sometimes things come up and we have to push it off into another week. But if you've registered, you're going to be getting reminders for the next ones. But typically, it's every third Tuesday at 1 Eastern. And so today, we're going to be going over a couple of Conference Tracker announcements, obviously our tech talk from the Conference Tracker experts. And at the very end, we're going to have a live Q&A session where we're going to answer any questions that you may have, whether it's about today's tech talk on registration or anything else. Now we're going to get right into the registration. So one of the first things that we'll be going over, especially when we're setting up your registration, would be the attendee registration settings. And this is where we're going to be able to configure your registration settings, such as registration fees, early bird fees, whether you want to set up a session registration where attendees can register to specific sessions, and as well as payment confirmation emails and notifications. Now, the way you get to this would be going simply to advanced options, settings, and attendee registration. Now, you can also do exhibitor registration through Conference Tracker, and it actually has its own settings where you can also set your registration fees and early bird fees, but also create exhibitor categories, set up booth reservations or turn on booth reservations, and more. And the way to go to this would be the exact same way. You just go to advanced option settings, but then click on your exhibitor registration. And normally the next thing we would then set up would be your payment settings to determine what type of payment methods you prefer and configure those payment reminders. So to get to this section, you go to advanced options, settings, and payments, and then you can decide whether you want to use Stripe, PayPal, Authorize.net, or maybe you want attendees to choose an invoice option, or say they want to pay by check, or maybe you can offer a cash option. So you can offer your online payment portal as well as an invoice option, a check option, or a cash option. This is also the same place where you go to set up your email payment reminders. This is something very popular amongst attendee and even exhibitor registration, is setting up those discount coupons or discount codes. So in Conference Tracker, you're going to be able to create coupon codes, whether it's for attendees, exhibitors, or even specific users, such as like maybe your members get a discount. So you can actually use the specific users option to give your members a member discount. And to get to this, you just go to advanced options and discount coupons. Now the coupons can actually be set to a certain amount off of the registration, a percentage off of the registration, or we can make it come down to a fixed price. So if they use this coupon code, it will go down to whatever price you've determined and not an amount or percentage off of their registration. And this can be done for all users. So you can allow any type of user that registers, whether it's attendee, presenter, exhibitor, or we can make it specific to attendees, specific to exhibitors, or only specific to certain users, like maybe members. You also can determine how often these coupon codes can be used. So they can be, like a one-time usage or 10 times or unlimited. And where we've seen this used as well is we can, maybe you want to say the first 20 attendees who register get an additional percentage off, or get a fixed price registration, something that might even be cheaper than your early bird. So you can actually set how many times they can be used, and obviously an expiration date. When would this coupon code expire? And then we get into actually creating the online registration form. Now to do this, you just simply go to attendees or exhibitors, depending on which registration form you're setting up, and you go to online registration. Then you'll click on, I think it's like edit form, edit registration form. Once you open it up, it's actually going to be preloaded with demographic questions: first name, last name, email, address, information that you typically would ask any type of attendee during registration. But then you can add additional questions And they could be multiple choice, multiple answer, fill in the blank, radio list, checkbox, drop down. And each of these options, you can even add an additional cost to it. So if they choose, yes, I want to come to the open reception and include a meal, it can have an additional cost for that particular option. We even support branching and logic. So if they answer a question a certain way, like, hey, are you a member? And they click yes, it could pop up another question or drop down another question that asks for like a membership ID number. Or if they say, yes, I want to come to lunch, and then we'll ask for their meal preference. So you can actually use branching or logic during the registration process. And then once you're ready to publish your registration form to your attendees, you can actually share it via your social networks just by a registration link. And maybe you send an email or you put a link on your conference website to that will then take the attendee to the registration form that you just built. Or a very popular option is using an iframe. So we can actually use an iframe to put it directly onto your own conference site or your own website to where it looks like the attendee is registering straight through your site and not going to like a third party like Conference Tracker to register. Now to share, once you've completed that registration form to share, you just go to attendees or exhibitors, depending on which registration form you want to publish, online registration, and then click the share option. You can see the screenshot there where you can share on your social network, include it on your website as an iframe, or you just want to copy the link to then create your own marketing email campaign. Now, some things that maybe we won't go over today because more of our one of our marketing tech talks. You can create marketing emails through a conference tracker to then include the registration link as well. So you can email potential attendees through conference tracker to get them to register. So that's one way you could actually use our marketing tools to share your registration link to potential attendees. So what happens now, once we have published the registration and attendees start registering or exhibitors start registering, unless you have decided you want to do an auto accept option, which means if the attendee registers, exhibitor registers successfully and makes payment, it automatically accepts them, they go into a pending status. Or if the attendee registers but forgets to make payment or decides not to make payment at that time, maybe because they chose an invoice option or a check option, they actually would go into a pending status. You'll be able to see which attendees have registered but have made payment and are pending, or have registered and have not made payment and are currently pending. And you'll even be able to send the payment instructions to those attendees that have registered but failed to complete payment. Something that's actually newer in our registration is you can actually receive an email notification for all new registrations. So you used to have to go into Conference Tracker and go to your registration list and see who's registered recently. But now you can set up to where it'll email you every time there's a new registrant. And this is also the place here, the online registration option, where you can set up your payment instructions and send them as well as set up your automatic reminders for payment. Now, if you decide to do session registration, if you allow attendees during the registration process to choose which sessions they plan to go to, we now allow attendees to edit their own session registration after submission. So it used to be when they registered their sessions, that session registration is locked. Now, if you want, you can actually toggle it on to allow attendees to go back and change and say, I don't want to go to the session anymore. I'd rather go to this one. Now, to enable that, you just go to Advanced Options, Settings, and Attendee Registration. You actually will see a little toggle there that says Enable Session Registration Edits. And now that'll give the attendee the ability to go back into the registration and unregister to a session or choose a different session that they'd rather go to. Now, the only thing here is if there are sessions changes that required fees. So if you had any sessions that were additional fees and they decided they no longer want to go to that session, it will be in a pending status until you mark it as refunded. So it kind of lets you know, like, hey, this attendee said they want to go to this session, or they no longer want to go to this session. There was a fee, and you can issue a refund to them, and then you can take it out of a pending status by marking it as refunded. The other option is if the attendee chooses another session that was a paid option, it will then take them to make payment for the additional option. Now, one feature that's been around for quite a while, but I still run into some of our users that may not be aware, is that after you've set up your registration with Conference Tracker for the first time, and you have another event with us in the future, you're actually going to be able to duplicate that registration form, uh, copy it over from a previous event to your next event or to your new event. You can still make changes to it, but what it does, it makes it to where you're not having to basically create that entire registration form again. Maybe you liked how you did the registration last year. You can actually copy it over to your new event and make any type of edit or changes that you want to, which is definitely going to save you some time. So to do that, if you click on your, I call it profile, but in the top right, it's either your initials or your picture. You click on yourself there, and you should see a drop down that says copy configurations. Not only can you copy the configurations for the registration forms, but also you can do it for your badge styles that you created last year, or even the certificates or the CEU styles that you created last year as well. And with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Garrett to actually get us into the Conference Tracker software.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chad, for that wonderful presentation. Let me share my screen here for everybody at home. So today we're going over registration, right? So we've got a lot to go over because registration in and of itself is a lot. So let's go start by going into our setup and enabling the features. So if you come into conference setup and scroll down near the bottom where you have all your visibility toggles, up here just above it, you'll see the enable toggle for attendee and exhibitor registration. Now this is what makes your registration live. So if at any point you want to test it, or if later on you want to shut off your registration, these are the power toggles that you would come to do that. Now with that on, of course, we're going to save changes. And then you'll notice in both your attendees and exhibitors panel that the online registration options will show there for you. Now when you come into here, into your online registration section, you have your edit button, your share, a quick button to access your coupons, and then a quicker button to access your registration analytics. You also have your visibilities for the different things that are enabled and disabled as far as payments and the actual registration form. And by clicking these, you can enable certain things here rather than actually having to navigate to your settings and go about it that way. But really quickly, we are going to travel to the proper settings just to show you where it is, and that's in advanced options, settings, and then you have both your attendee registration and your exhibitor registration settings here. Now, most important is the payments settings. These you're going to want to get done as soon as you can. Make your selections as to which payment processors or payment types, I should say, that you want to allow for your registration. And then you make your selection for your payment processor. Are we using Stripe? Are we using Authorize.net for credit cards and debit cards? Or are we just using PayPal? Now, if we continue down in this list, you'll see these payment reminders over here. So these payment reminders will go out to anyone that's pending, and they're going to go out on the dates that you select. So of course, you're going to first enable the payment reminders and then set the dates that you want them to go out. It's important that you set the on date to before your event start, because we also have the option to send one before this date and one after this date. So if we're starting on May 9th, which you can see over here, I would come in here and set this to May 2nd, and then say 3 days before, so they'll get it sometime in April, and then 5 days after. They'll get it on the 7th, 2 days before the event start. Of course, be sure that you're checking all your boxes here, and then save changes to make everything official. So we're going to start with the attendee registration settings while we're here. These are going to be your general toggles for your online session registration, Are you allowing them to register to overlapping sessions? Are we allowing multiple attendees to register at once, or is everyone going to be on a separate registration? Of course, if we are allowing multiple attendees at once, are we going to clear the fields when they add a new registration? Or do we want certain things to copy over and they can just edit the choices that they've already made? You also have control over your session registration title. Some conferences use the word workshop instead of sessions, so of course we want to be able to accommodate to that. As well, you have the power toggle to allow attendees to edit their session registration. Over here, we're dealing with your base registration fees for regular and early bird. And you're going to set the date that it's valid through, as well as your auto accept settings. So if you want this to kind of be more of a hands-off experience, we can toggle these on, and the only ones that will remain pending are going to be those that shows pending payment statuses. An example, invoice or check, cash, things that they have to do later. As well, you have your new registration notifications. This is seen in both attendee and exhibitor registration settings. If you want this to just be one person, that's fine. If you're going to go for two, we just ask that you separate them with a comma. As well, you're going to see all of the email templates that are available throughout the registration process. This includes your payment instructions, your confirmation emails, your success message. So once they're done with registration, if you want to pass them more specific information, maybe about the hotel or something like that, this is a great place to do that. So now let's briefly step into the exhibitor registration settings because it's a tiny bit different. You have the availability to mark how many free reps each exhibiting company gets, or if you're charging for additional reps, you can set up that price here as well. We're going to see the same registration fees, early and regular, with your early bird. Like Chad talked about, you can create categories for your exhibitors. So if you have, very specific niches, you can have everyone select the category that they fit in on their company profile. This is going to be your enable setting for booth reservation. If you want to upload maybe an exhibit hall map into the system, you can mark your booths and the prices and descriptions for those as well. Of course, we'll look into that in a little bit. And then those same email templates from earlier, just on the exhibitor side. So if you want to pass them shipping information, maybe attention tos, anything like that, this is a great place for those information pieces to go. Now let's step into our actual registration form here. We're going to come to attendees online registration and jump into the edit button here. And you're going to see all of the base demographic questions, that's typically asked of your average attendee during registration, but you're going to have all of your question types over here on the right. Now these are pretty simple to use. Just click to add it to the bottom of the form, and then you'll see that they populate down here. Now each box has its own settings, as well, of course, a trash can and a copy button. So if you're asking the same type of question, you're just going to word it a little differently, we can just copy that question, change a couple things, and then keep moving on and powering through. Now, for a lot of your question types, you're going to see a lot of these same toggle switches here. Visibility. Do you want this to be immediately visible when an attendee visits the page, or do you want this to be invisible until they make another selection up above? Do you want this information to be shown on the email notifications that the attendees get sent as they step through this process? And then groups. Is this question going to be a member of a group of questions that you are going to show? This starts going into the if-then logic that the registration form is really built on. So if they make one selection, then they see this other question or group of questions. Of course, this is a paragraph question, so it's just a free floating text box here, and you have all of your nice little customizations. Let's look at some of the more commonly used question types. You get a lot of radio lists when you go through registration, some drop downs, check boxes, things of this nature. So to kind of give you an idea of the logic, right? If we're coming through here, we're going to say that this first question is visible. and we're just going to ask a super quick question for our attendees. Are you in need of any special accommodations? Yes or no. So we'll just add our answers here. You have a cute little plus button here to add another option. And then this question is done. We're going to go ahead and make this a required question as well. So everyone has to answer this. And we're going to close this question so we can see the whole form. Now in this second question box, we're going to make this one invisible. And we're going to ask them for what accommodations they need. How can we assist? And we're going to leave our options blank for this one just so I can show you the logic. Now, when you're setting up these if-then visible questions, what's important here is the name of the question. In this case, it's radio list 16. So in this first question, we're going to come into the settings, and if they answer yes, we're going to show radio list 16 as the next question. And that gives you an idea of really how the question logic is set up within registration. If you have group of questions that you've created, say we want to call this and put this in an accommodations box, or accommodations group, I should say, then you'll see it populate down here in the shows as the accommodations group of questions. So with all of that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the exhibitor side of things. Now their registration is going to be the exact same. You're just going to have the same demographic questions. The one difference here is because they are exhibitors, the company question is required and cannot be changed. But that's the only difference really besides within the registration form for question types. Now we turned on booth registration earlier within the settings. So really quickly, I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here I've already created an exhibit hall booth floor. So if you have multiple floors, if you have hall A and for instance hall B, we can create a second booth here. And all that's required is the name and of course your image file. Now with that created, we're going to go ahead and step in here and you'll see my little exhibit hall file and some of the booths that I've already created here for us. Now, when you create these booths, you'll see them populate down here with a booth number, a description. You can put them into a category if you'd like. Maybe you're delimiting booths by sponsor level. Of course, a price as well. Now you have all of these different shape types because we know sometimes these exhibit floors get a little weird. And of course, we also have a form free type. So if you'd like to draw your own, that is an option for you as well. Once you have all this set up the way you like it, you would just save your changes. And then when you go through to test your registration, you'll see that booth reservation feature pop up after they fill out what you set up here in the edit registration, online registration form. So really quickly, while we're on the topic of testing, there's a couple things that come into testing that are very important. First off is how do I test? So for either of your registrations, the attendee or the exhibitor, you're gonna have this share button. And over here and send the link, you're gonna have your actual registration link. Now we're gonna click the copy button here. And what's important is that you open up your registration to test it in a window that you're not signed into Conference Tracker in. Otherwise, you're just gonna be redirected back to your dashboard. So to do this in Google Chrome, we're gonna come up here to the 3 dots and click an incognito window. And then we're just gonna paste and go to that link. You'll see that the exhibitor registrations popped up for us, and then we could run through this and test it out however we'd like. Now, of course, Chad also talked about the iframe, which is right here, and you have your copy button for a quick copy on the side, and of course, those links to share on the different social medias. Now, one of the things that differs with the attendee registration, of course, was your ability to edit your session registration. So if you guys are enabling session registration and allowing your attendees to make those selections in advance, If they decide to change their mind, and of course, if you've given them this power, they can come in to their login on Conference Tracker and they can edit those sessions. Now, like Chad said, if any of those session changes require any sort of fees or anything of that nature, they will show up pending here under session registration transactions within the attendees menu. And just to give you an idea of what a completed one looks like, I've got a couple here for us. So of course, this is going to be orange and it'll say pending on the proper pending page. But once you've marked it as refunded, you'll see you get this nice little green check mark here. You can even see the changes that were free. And if you want to look at it in more detail, we do have a show details option, which will give you the breakdown of what they did. Now, another important part of registration is the coupons, right? You have a lot of coupons and a lot of different types that you may need to create. So we can click that coupons button there right from the online registration, but the proper home for this is within your advanced options, discount coupons. Now from here, you've got your create button, and what's required is your name and the code. Now the code will be in all caps. So you don't have to turn on any caps lock on your keyboard. You can just type away. The name, of course, and description is completely up to you. That's just for you to keep track of which coupon's which, what it does. But we have a couple different types here. We have amount, percentage, fixed price. Everyone's familiar with percentage. This is what we see very commonly, you know, in your consumer stores, you know, 50% off, 20% off. Amount is going to be given a solid amount off. So if you're offering $20 off, $50 off, this would be the coupon type for you. As well, we have fixed price. Now this is a bit of a weird occurrence one, but it does get used quite often. The basic way to understand this one is no matter what your registration is, I'm going to bring it down to a fixed price of $200, $300. Now what's important as well is the validity and expiration. So if you do have, you know, like early bird coupons or something like that that you're passing out, it's important that we set our expiration date here as well. Or if you just want to limit maximum number of uses, say first 50 people get this coupon, you know, for 50% off, you have the option to do that as well. What's most important is you're valid for. What is this coupon? Who is this coupon valid for? Is it valid for everyone, just attendees, just exhibitors, or a new addition that we made in 2023 with specific people? So if you have a list of members or students and you know the email that they're going to be signing up with, we can list those emails here. And as they go through registration, this coupon will be automatically applied for them. Now, if you do want to do this quickly, we do have a quick little import button here so that you can upload from a CSV file. If you need a sample file, that's available for you as well. With that, that really covers everything from top to bottom in registration. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on over to our Q&A portion of today's Tech Tuesday. So let me open up our questions box and see if we have anything here. Chad, did we get anything?
Yes, I was just looking. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties, but so yes, one question that's actually asked pretty often is, can donations be made through registration? And I know Garrett has helped a number of our clients accomplish this.
Yes, absolutely. We actually have a specific field question type in registration. It's called the money question type. And you can phrase that question, of course, however you like. You know, would you like to donate to X fund? And of course, the default will pop up for them as 0. But if they choose to donate, it's a great way to raise more money for any cause.
Great, and something that always gets asked to me, you know, doing sales especially, is how early can we open up our registration? So the way that Conference Tracker works is as soon as you sign on with Conference Tracker, we go ahead and we get started with the setup process. And as soon as your registration is ready, you can publish it. So it's really up to you how early you want to open up your registration. But it could be a year before your event, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 months. It's totally up to you. As soon as you sign on with Conference Tracker, you can start opening up your registration for your attendees.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, I encourage that we sit down and we schedule a meeting together and we go through registration together, because there is a lot of fine tuning points, as you go through that process, that it's important to make sure that we check that box.
Yeah, there's another one. It's asking about on-site registration. So I know we didn't go over necessarily on-site registration here, but there are ways to do on-site registration through Conference Tracker. One of them, what most conferences do currently, is they may have some laptops or devices, iPads, that are open up to the registration page at the registration booth. So when attendees walk up that aren't registered, they can go ahead and register right there on site. I know of another conference that printed out a QR code, and the attendee was able to scan the QR code from their phone, and it took them to the registration page from their phone, and they were able to register that way. And then you even have check-in stations that you can set up that will allow your attendees that have already registered to check in. But if an attendee hasn't registered yet, not only does it allow them to register from that kiosk, but it does allow them to check in and even print out a badge on site. So that's all part of our check-in process option.